Hello everyone. Welcome to the session 4 of the 2024 APRU SWM Global ESG and Sustainability Lecture Series hosted by the APRU Sustainable Waste Management Program. Today's lecture will be delivered by Ms. Bonny Bentzin, the Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer at the University of California, Los Angeles, United States. Following the lecture, we'll have a panel discussion and a Q&A session. I am Samhita Ankareddy, the moderator for today's session, and I am also a PhD student at Korea University. Before we begin the lecture, I would like to give a brief introduction to the APRU SWM program. The APRU Sustainable Waste Management Program is an integral part of the APRU membership and consistently works towards achieving the UN SDGs through thoughtfully designed events and programs aimed at raising awareness on sustainability, UN SDGs, and the concept of ESG. The 2024 APRU SWM Global ESG and Sustainability Lecture Series commenced this April, and the first 3 sessions drew audience from various geographies with wide expertise. We encourage you to look forward to today's session as well as the upcoming sessions, participate actively, and engage with us further. You can find more information on our website regarding speakers and registration. Moving to today's session, Ms. Bentzin will provide valuable insights into sustainability practices within the realm of higher education. Following the lecture, she will engage in a discussion with panelists who are experts and practitioners of sustainability and come from diverse geographies. Before we dive into the session, I would like to give you all a brief about our speaker. It is my honor to introduce our speaker for today's seminar, Ms. Bonny Bentzin, the Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer at UCLA. Ms. Bentzin is a key member of the leadership team for sustainability at UCLA, helping manage sustainability across the university and working to foster partnerships among academic, research, and operational departments to create a world-class living laboratory for sustainability. Ms. Bentzin is an experienced sustainability expert with a focus on developing and executing sustainability programs in the field of higher education and complex organizations and has over 12 years of leadership, management, and consulting experience, both within large-scale organizations and as an outside consultant. She has also worked closely with the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, ASHE, since the organization's beginning in 2006. She was an active contributor to the American College and University's President's Climate Commitment from its establishment through 2013. She is a contributing author to several publications and is currently working on several resources and professional development workshops for sustainability officers. At the end of the seminar, we'll have a panel discussion and a Q&A session, and I request all of you to actively interact with Ms. Bentzin and our panelists. With this, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our speaker, our panelists, and our participants. Without further ado, Ms. Bentzin, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see here. That should be right.
Yes.
Okay, everyone can see my screen, okay? If I could take a quick sort of read of the room, how many students do I have in the room? How many staff? And how many faculty? Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So if you could raise your hand if you're a student enroll in your university. Thank you, Rita. And staff? And staff, okay, yeah, some of us play multiple roles. And faculty? Teaching, research? Okay. All right, Rita, I get it. I've been there. Okay, so I thought I'd talk today a little bit about, I'll share a little bit about what we're doing in sustainability at UCLA, and then I'll move into some of the strategies that that support integrating sustainability into our large complex organizations or even small complex organizations. And some of these slides are slides I share with students that are working on applied learning projects. We've got a number of courses on campus where students work with campus clients on a campus project. And so I talk to them about what they can expect and how they should start to better understand UCLA as an organization. So first, I'll just share a little bit about me. You will more than likely always find me outside. I am an avid baker. I bake wedding cakes for my friends as gifts because they're ridiculously expensive. I'm a beekeeper and I advise the student beekeeping club on campus. On any given day in my work, you'll find me in a boardroom speaking to leadership, or you can find me in a dumpster. And here I am in a dumpster pulling out reusable goods that our students had thrown away. And so this is me in the middle here with the blue and white shirt in the dumpster. I'm a traveler, I'm a gardener, and I'm a scuba diver, and I love to be just outdoors and swimming. And on the left here is my, a big part of my why. It's my partner and his 11-year-old son that I get to be the bonus mom to. So I love just getting out there and exploring, and I love traveling to all different types of places. I always learn something. I always see something, a different way approach to do things. And I think we always have something to learn from each other. So there's a little bit about me. So a little bit about UCLA sustainability. We are just like a small city. We are one of 10 campuses. We are the largest population on the smallest amount of land in our system. So 419 acres with a daily population of 85,000 people. Every one of those people have the potential to be a change agent. And that's something that's really important. And I try to drive in across the board is that, when I'm speaking to new employees or students or faculty is, you see something I don't see. You have a perspective I don't have, and it takes all of our perspectives to do this well. Unlike many campuses in the US, we actually have a hospital tied to our power and water system, which certainly makes it interesting. In the past 2 Septembers, we've had heat waves, and we've been asked by our local utility to shed some of our energy load. And we didn't have enough cooling to keep all of our buildings up and running. So we shut down 35 buildings. And right at the start of school, very disruptive. And our priorities on the campus are at the end of the day to keep the hospital up and running. So our student housing is would be shut down after those 35 buildings, and then labs, which are in critical research, critical data, critical infrastructure, solving problems, saving lives, and lots of research dollars would be affected as well, because at the end of the day, we got to keep the hospital up. We've got over 25 million square feet, 5,000 labs, 17,500 beds on campus. We're the athletic village for the 2028 Olympics. And so we just added more beds to our campus. 42,000 students and a very high applicant rate. We started off with just these, you can see there wasn't much around us, and we have grown and really cantilevered over and dug into pretty much any space on campus to try to utilize our 419 acres. In terms of approaching this work, we do view this as, a responsibility of stewardship, of managing our resources that are in our operations, our teaching, our research, and engaging all of our stakeholders and our community around us. And that's a challenge because universities are not set up to connect all of these things. And I'll talk more about this in a bit. I don't need to tell you why this is important. I'm sure that y'all are feeling some impacts of climate change or some impacts of the waste practices in modern society. Here in California, we are experiencing intense drought and wildfire and soaring temperatures. And this is the new normal. The new normal is chaos, basically. And how do we manage and be a more resilient campus and community and supportive for our community while we're dealing with extreme highs and lows and extremes across the board. I'm working on some resilience planning for the university, equity-based resilience, and the model that a consultant provided with us said, oh, you're not going to see that much difference in average temperature or average rainfall. And I said, this is not appropriate, because what is affecting us are, yes, we're going to see the same rough amount of rainfall each year, but we're seeing it come in all in just 3 storms, which is having a serious impact on our buildings and our people. Or, you know, that while the average temperatures are going to stay the same, we are going to see these extremes, these swings. And so we have to be preparing for this. So we did a sustainability plan. If we've got time at the end, I can show the video for it. But it was the first ever of taking a lot of different work, 45 different plans, and putting it under one entity. And also for the first time in the UC system, really setting a stake in the ground of trying to build a more comprehensive academic and research, connected research in sustainability. There's a lot of work going on in sustainability and learning, but how do we better connect it and bridge across those silos? And in my early work at Arizona State University, that was what we did. So I was working in the president's office designing the program for that university. So our commitment to sustainability runs the gamut across, and in my office and in my role, it's the entire portfolio. So it's in our policy, our formal UC policy, we have zero waste and green buildings and climate and energy and transportation and food systems and purchasing and now, you know, and water, and we're starting to roll in equity, diversity, inclusion as an overlay, as well as health and wellness. And with that, you know, landscape and biodiversity. And throughout this is how do we take this, which has been predominantly, at least the formal work in sustainability across the university, very operations focused, and recognizing that we have to bridge that gap into core vision mission of research and learning. Because that's the university, that's why we exist, is to develop and impart knowledge and solve problems. You know, but we've got these silos. And when I use that term, does everyone understand what a silo is? Yes, no? Silo? If you ever go on a farm in the Midwest, yep, okay, good, great. I always ask that question because I'll tell you the number of students I talk to that say they don't know what a silo is. So I just always have to ask now. So here's a picture of a smart grid research project that was Rajit God's work. So they installed a solar smart grid system to power vehicles on our parking structures, and it has an inverter and battery backup, and was part of the research and also providing a service to the university. You know, we have a heavy emphasis on building, it's called the HCI, Healthy Campus Initiative. How do we become the most healthy campus in the world? And so that has intersected with sustainability since its inception. This is an example of a project they did where, you know, in our buildings in the US, at least, you know, we hide the staircases. They're the afterthoughts for the emergency, and the elevators are prominent, right? Well, you know, how do you shift the paradigm and make, you know, climbing the stairs the norm? And so they went into, first of all, put branding on our elevator doors, and then turned the stairwell into a art gallery. Painted it, put new lighting, made it less scary and more inviting. And it's just an example of a project of, you know, connecting in. This was a grad student's project in our School of Public Health. Okay. And then, you know, just some examples of actions on the campus. Single-use plastics, we've got a policy. We're in the process of enforcement building, which is not something we do on our campus, but really getting the single-use plastics and the dining and the bottles off the campus. I hear a lot, well, it's more expensive to buy the aluminum bottles. Yes, but there's this product that we used to use. It was so cheap for insulating buildings. You know, it was light, it was amazing, it was perfect, and it's also incredibly toxic. You know, as we learn, you know, a product that we may have been using for years may not be the right product. And so there's a reason why it was so cheap. So, you know, really shifting that thinking and helping people understand that water is a right, not a privilege, and making sure they have bottle filling too, and shift that cultural norm so people can fill those bottles and have a source of clean water. Really managing a waste stream to interrupt the many freeway miles and the methane impact of our waste streams, and looking at that from the front end as well as the back, so our procurement side. So how do we disrupt that from the front? But you know, also how do we address the output at the time being? We've got an Institute for Sustainability that coordinates research across, and is also the hub of applied learning courses. A Smart Buildings and Labs program, which is about how do we rethink how we are running our buildings and integrate new systems and cultural norms in, really taking a look at our food footprint. We, on our dining facilities alone, which is only a half of our food world on campus, we have 48,000 meals a day, and we're in a semi-arid region. So you can imagine, to be able to provide that much food, we've got to draw in from a long distance. That has a huge impact. We've got programs like water reclamation that our engineers designed to take water that was headed for the storm drain from various systems on campus, including our condensate, and capturing it and sending it to our cogen plant, which is our power plant, and is 40% of our water load. It uses 1 million gallons of water a day. And in California, that's important. We've got to disrupt that. And one of the things that you'll hear me say many times in this presentation, in doing sustainability in campuses, my goal is always to how many different, if I can solve multiple problems at once, that's the goal, right? Not just to solve this one problem, but how do we have multiple positive outcomes? And a water reclamation program was just an example of that. Our engineers used existing infrastructure we had, gravity feeding this down. This water that was coming from condensate was so pure that it was stripping the metals out of our pipes, and then we go to the storm drains and we have contaminated storm water. And so, having this, capturing this water and directing it elsewhere, we're lowering that liability. We're lowering our water liability. It was water that was just coming from air, essentially. So really, really important. I've mentioned our Healthy Campus Initiative. And I've mentioned purchasing, and the other one is we've got 2 grand challenges. One is about, for the university, one is about mental health and directing research on mental health. And the other one is, how do we make LA a sustainable megacity? And so that's the Sustainable LA Grand Challenge. And I mentioned, I always want to solve more than, one problem at once. And here's an example where this image up here, we had turf, and high water intensive, not a lot of value, if it's not in the right spot. And at the same time, we've got students who need more places to study and hang out. And we've got this great weather, it's an asset. And so, they basically have started a program where we're removing turf or, water intensive plants and replacing it with outdoor study spaces. And also lowering that water load and actually meeting a need of students and giving them, a chance to forest bathe, if you will, and be outside with the trees. And by planting native plants, we're in the foothills of the Santa Monica Mountains. We should be a way station or a stopover point for native flora or native fauna. And so we're building that sort of those ecosystems, restoring them. So other goals that we have are to obtain 100% clean electricity, creating a pathway to decarbonization. Our goals change over time as we learn more. Our original goal was carbon neutrality. We had students and staff and faculty that pushed us to think differently. And now we're working on a pathway for decarbonization that is, goes way beyond adding, carbon offsets as our sort of closing the gap system. This will be expensive, but it's also about building a resilient campus. Reducing our food emissions from our greenhouse gas emissions with food and thinking plant forward, not removing meat altogether. But how do we put meat more of an accent, and take it away from that front and forward that is common in the US. Really supporting our biodiversity on campus grounds. We've removed the use of herbicides on the campus. And what's been amazing is watching how our soil was so degraded from just grass, a monoculture. And now when we turned the water off to our grass and during the major drought, our grass was actually stayed greener longer because it wasn't just grass. It was a mixture of different plants that actually were fixing nitrogen in the soil and staying green longer, and provides food for our pollinators. And then of course, reducing our waste generation and potable water consumption. Yeah, we can skip all this. You can read that later if you want, but basically it's just how do we build a stronger culture and integrate everyone into this work. And just more examples of how do we, solve multiple problems at once. This was one of our first turf conversions that was done. It was here on the left here is just this blank turf. This is down on what's called South Campus. It's where our natural and physical sciences are. And I think the thinking was, oh, we don't need to give them nice places to hang out because these are scientists and they sit in labs all the time. They don't want to be outside. Right. So, this is one of our first projects. It's built in with native plants and still pervious surfaces, which is really important for managing water, and seating. And I see lab meetings meeting out there all the time, people coming out of their labs to eat lunch, building community, giving everyone a break from their spaces. But more importantly, it's a bioswale. So, in LA, we have this interesting relationship with water. I can discuss a little bit more at the end, but it was one of the history pieces I had to learn because I didn't understand this place. But a bioswale, for those of you who don't know, helps to capture water that, for runoff from rain, slow it down so it's not rushing down hills, and then filter it back into the groundwater. I'm also, here's another example. I advise the beekeeping club on campus. We actually have beehives on the roof of a building right here, actually. This is our life sciences building. And we took some old facilities, research facilities that weren't being used anymore, and modified them for our apiary. So, sustainability in higher education. How many of you work directly developing sustainability programs on your campuses or in your organizations? Rita, I know. Yes, no. I get it. I can usually get a response from you. Do you work in sustainability? Yeah, great. Okay. Great, perfect. I just like to know who I'm talking to. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Here's some students here that were designing a stormwater capture system for a parking structure, by the way, and here's that water reclamation system I was talking about. These are all the different places where they capture that water. So, so one of the key elements for culture change is really, I try to really understand when I go to a place, its history. The history of the place itself, the organization, how it came about, what drove its development in the first place, why, what's the weather, what's the geography, what are the values of the people who started it, who are the stakeholders who've been involved over the years, and why does it exist in the first place, and there's lots of different tools you can use on this, but here's an example right here of. This is the first structure that was built on campus, this bridge. You would never know it's there. Most people don't know it's there. I got very excited because on a campus with no space, when we filled in all these other areas, but on either side of it, we didn't fill in under the bridge. And all the buildings that got shut down in the heat wave are in this part of the old part of the campus, which are the social sciences and the arts and the administration. And while artists admittedly are used to some hardship. There's my little joke. Sorry, some of you may, at the same time, we don't want to be shutting their work down. So, in thinking about how could we build a more resilient North Campus, we could be putting a ground source heat pump system and tanks under that bridge. And it's right on tunnels that goes to all the buildings. And so to learn the history of your place, because you might find opportunities and things that you didn't know were there. And in higher ed, we operate very differently than other organizations. We are small cities. We have this core vision mission of educating students and furthering research. And then there's this whole other group of people, right, and that work in tiers away from that core vision mission. With the first tier being student affairs and those areas, and then you move away and even further, and it's the people running the campus. And as a result, you have disconnects between all of these different groups, and you often have disconnects on really on the campus stakeholders understanding how the campus operates and why things happen the way they do, and what the opportunities are. Because of these different stakeholders of faculty, staff, operations, administrators, the campus moves in these different scales of time, and the values are different of how different groups are evaluated for success. On students, we compress them into these different timeframes of quarters or semesters or a year. It's an artificial time frame that we put them on these peaks and valleys of stress, and where they have when they're in the valley of stress, they can have, they don't have the stress anymore. They can think coherently, and when they're stressed, they're focused on their work and moving around a bit, right? And so they're this sort of more sporadic, and faculty are a little less sporadic, but still sporadic because they're on that same train, right? And then, administration are thinking really high level and long term, and operations people are crisis, and they're trying to hold the campus together. And so we've got all these different value systems, and I'll talk a little bit more of that in a second. And students are the smartest people on campus because their risk and no-can-do filters aren't installed yet. Students come up with crazy ideas, and some of them won't work. Many of them won't work, but every single major accomplishment on our campus started with a student idea. I give a tour to students, student groups on campus, and say, then show them what students got done that had opened the door for us to do that. I never would have been able to ask to have bees on campus. I waited for students to come and want to do it, because then that's a different story. Students are very central to the campus. I've mentioned we've got all these different silos, and not just between these 4 major areas of the university, but you can break that down throughout that. And across the campus, we're running, we're doing our work with rules that have been established, but not by us, and maybe not by people that really understand what's going on. They're operating at a very high level. And so that's a challenge as well. Check my time. Ooh, I better speed up. Okay, so I always try to take a look about, how to build a holistic strategy using your organization's, culture, what drives it, understanding your stakeholders, who's in your family, and what drives them, and what their value system is, and how they're evaluated. Who are the clients? What's interesting is students and faculty sometimes are both. They're both in the family, and they're both clients, if you will. Who are my partners? Who are my vendors? Develop the asset map. So what are your strengths and weaknesses? And sometimes the weaknesses are your strengths. And so that's a huge important, auditing, creating information, finding data. Benchmarking is critical, and sometimes it's just not possible. If your university or your organization has not been set up to track data, you've got to do that extra work to find that data. I often look where there's waste, any type of waste, because there's lost money and added risk. And those things are usually your, first steps, your first things you should want to start with, because they are fairly easy to move forward, all things considered. And they probably align with, there's someone major in the university that cares about it. I mentioned your challenge areas, your opportunity areas. I always look there. Setting your goals, but you got to keep moving it up. I can't tell you how many times we rewrite our goals. Okay, oops, sorry. That was. And then, always start with something familiar that's going to be a success, no matter how small it is. Humans, in my early days of work at ASU, my mentor taught me that humans are fairly simple on what drives us. We want to be successful. We want to have freedom. We want to work with our friends. We want to have recognition or make money or whatever. And so, start with starting with something that's really familiar and that it's going to be a success, no matter how small it is. And it has to be something that's really core to your value. And then start focusing on the long game. And oftentimes I accept that I'm going to have some failures, and as long as it's going to get me a next step forward. So engaging leadership and building that institutional buy-in. Again, it's got to be relevant and aligning with existing goals. There are many projects I've put aside because the timing wasn't right. You've got to build those relationships and invest that time into it. In a university, you have a lot of negative discourse, where different things, at least in US universities, where there's different perceptions of what's going on, and there's what's really going on, and there's a negative discourse that happens as a result. And so one of the things I do is try to just build that relationship and listen, and start to try to connect up where there's these disconnects, and try to get everyone to take a step back and understand how things really operate, how decisions are made, and why we do the things we do. I always try to just leave my ego at the door. It's hard, but I do it. I'm just really free with my apologies and thank yous, because I'm thinking that long game. And always, how do we demonstrate value? how do we measure success? How do we verify success? And how do we solve multiple problems at once? I said I'd talk a little bit more about these, 4 major areas on campus. Now, you could go a lot deeper, and there's a lot more nuances to this. But again, students, they're transient. Their role is to get a degree. Because they're overprogrammed and they have a short attention span because we've forced them into these really sporadic systems, but they're very creative thinkers and passionate and believe anything's possible. And they, when well organized, carry weight within the organization. Faculty are these, long-term or sort of ongoing because their job is to be critical theoretical thinkers. That's why they're there. And they're often out of the loop or feel they're out of the loop of widespread decision-making. Some of them are in a tenure rat race, which means they can't do anything fun until they get that tenure. And sometimes they don't quite understand the culture out of their realm. But they carry possible funding. They know how, those that know how to use it carry a lot of weight, and their core vision mission. Administrators are short and long-term thinkers. They're worried about the immediate crisis and where we're headed. And they're operating usually at the 30 or 100,000 foot level, and they're often making decisions for how we do things on campus, and they may not really understand what's going on, but they have a lot of reach. And the operations staff are not valued or evaluated on how they support student learning or faculty research. They are unheard, unseen, unheard, because if they're seen or heard, there's a crisis. And sometimes they can be cynical. And in fact, there can be cynicism across these. And yet what I view as one of the superpowers of a university is that despite the cynicism and people feeling a little jaded, at the deep kernel, there's a deep pride across the board. And so really, how do you tap into that and bring people together? So, at UCLA, we've got, we're a top tier university. We've got a strong sense of pride, and we've got accomplished students, and we're also very bureaucratic. We run on org charts, and we have space challenges, and we have limited bandwidth, and we have limited staff. We have silos and decentralized budgets, and we're risk averse, and the neighbors that are very opinionated, and we lack data. And it's, because of this, we've got these different internal value systems that I mentioned, and we've got these different, who's got the money and what's it for and what's it's tagged for and all these different parts I don't want to go into about our university, but we've got these idiosyncrasies that you have to understand if you want to understand who your power players are, how decisions are made, and what drives that organization. And on the operation side, there's lots of different ways that you can build out efforts as a starting point and then in the long term. Some of the things that I work on the longest are things procurement and product sourcing. We're one of the largest purchasers in the state of California. Our dollar matters. And so I can actually shift a whole market if I can get the university to shift the way it buys something. It's one of our superpowers. We don't like to leverage it, and I'm working on getting us there. But it's a huge value. Shifting that education and behavior takes a long time. Process change can be a short to long change, but sometimes there's people waiting for processes to be changed and made more efficient. Creating policy, you can create them fast, takes a long time to get people to follow them. Demonstration projects are great for getting people over the fear factor. Really focusing on new infrastructure, especially as we experience big challenges with our resilience. And, the thing that everyone needs to understand that at least, universities in the US, we are driven off of these org charts, and org charts are get very dense really quickly. There's a lot of depth here. You can also learn a lot about your org chart. So this is an org chart, so a map I did on, looking at single-use plastics and decision makers and who are the major players. So, you look at all the different places and all the different groups in here that have a role in our success in single-use plastic. And that's just in the implementation side. Then you go to the everyone else. But another thing that's really interesting about looking at your org chart is you learn about a lot about your organization. Like you can see the division here. So our academic side of the house is all over here on the right. These first 3 columns, they are core vision mission. And then the next tier of, adjacent to, and, still in, but on the edge of core vision mission is this middle tier of leadership. And then as you move over, to this next tier, they've got their toe in core vision mission, but they're on the outskirts. And then you've got the operations here. And so I think it's very interesting to look at an org chart and use it to better understand what's driving your organization. And the biggest challenge of all is to get people to step out of their silos, do something that maybe they've already done before and it didn't work then, but maybe it'll work now. And what's important about this is silos create breakdown in communication. They're a loss in opportunity. They prevent efficiency. They create defects and added risk, and they're barriers to collaboration. And this is where I got to see if people are paying attention. This is a visual on the right of something, of a visual of a silo. And it's actually something I saw on my campus in Arizona. And, I can tell you what happened right here is that, the plumbing shop was told to put the spigot here, and the electrical shop was told to put the electrical here. And if you change the plans that you're directed to and something goes wrong, you're held liable. But if you follow what you're told, then, and something goes wrong, well, this is what I was told. And so this is right here, an example of just a visual. We've got silos throughout our organization and they're holding us back. So, the goal here, what we need to accomplish is move off of these very rigid org charts that as you get further and further down the line, the communication gets harder and harder. And we need to move to being proteins. And when I was working at Arizona State University, and we had hundreds of meetings, and I was meeting with a researcher from the Biodesign Institute, and they said, and he's like, "Oh, you're trying to create a protein." And I was like, "Excuse me, can you help me understand what you mean? I'm gonna have to see some artwork." And he sent me this picture, and he said that, in the human body, when something needs to happen, a cell moves to the middle and everything organizes around it for the outcome and once that outcome is achieved, everything reorganizes again. So it's not stuck on an org chart. Can you imagine if our bodies were on an org chart trying to manage temperature and manage hydration and manage our mental health and everything, right? That would be problematic. So how do we still work in org charts, but look and act like a protein, be outcomes focused? So to do that, we need to blend the strengths of the university, across the university, have a fusion across disciplines, and build a critical mass of research, education, and operations expertise. So again, to sort of finalize is, if to be successful in this work, you want to work within institutional narratives. What is your culture? What are your values? How are you established? Understand the whys. Why do you do things? Why are you the way you are, your organization? Build those relationships. They're key. It takes time and savvy, and you really have to honor the access that you're given as you get to know people. You want to map your stakeholders and assets to identify who are the real and perceived decision makers and where the resources are flowing. You follow the money and you understand the management requirements. Leverage your organization's weaknesses to solve multiple problems, and build on short and long-term success. And then make sure that there's someone there to caretake what you're developing, and always remember to communicate, promote, and recognize what's happening. So I'll stop there. I think we had some questions here. I'm not quite sure how this next part starts.
Yes, I'll just briefly introduce our panelists before we dive into the panel discussion session. Thank you very much, Ms. Bentzin, for such a comprehensive talk and for giving us insights about embedding sustainability into our higher education institutions. So before we move into the panel discussion session, we have a polite request for our attendees. We would like to capture a group photo with all of you at the end of the panel discussion session. Since we are conducting the session in Zoom webinar mode, it comes with its own set of advantages and disadvantages. To ensure that everyone's videos are visible, we'll need to promote each attendee to the panelist role. We will assist in promoting you as panelists towards the end of the session for the group photo, and we kindly ask for your cooperation and understanding. Thank you very much, everyone. Now, let us proceed to the panel discussion session. Allow me to introduce our esteemed panel members for today's session. We have Professor Rico Angkok, a professor and current dean of the School of Environmental Science and Management at the University of Philippines, Los Baños. A respected academic and researcher, he works on environmental management and governance topics in Philippines and Southeast Asian region, particularly on economic, evaluation of ecosystem services and environmental policies. He was awarded the Outstanding Young Scientist by the National Academy of Science and Technology, Philippines. We have Professor Mahanim Hanif, the head of the Department of Quantity Surveying at the University of Malaya, Malaysia. She holds a PhD from Salford University, UK, and has expertise in project management, lean construction, and sustainability. Professor Hanif's research includes circular economy ecosystems, construction and demolition waste management, and adaptive reuse of heritage buildings. We have Dr. Mazura Masir, a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Built Environment, University of Malaya. She has over 10 years of academic experience and holds degrees in quantity surveying, construction contract management, and a PhD in built environment. She has authored numerous journals and participated in workshops and seminars focused on sustainable development in construction. We have Ms. Rita Edze, a PhD candidate at the Faculty of Education, University of Melbourne. Her research focuses on sustainability in higher education and its relation to policy and indigenous knowledge in Ghana. Rita is also embarking on an action-oriented project to embed sustainability across Ghanaian higher education activities through top-down and bottom-up approaches, including place-based education strategies. We have Ms. Yura Cho, who holds a bachelor's degree in environmental ecological engineering and Chinese language and literature from Korea University, and who is currently doing her doctoral studies. She has collaborated on multidisciplinary environmental science research with teams from China, the UK, Australia, Canada, Japan, and many more countries. Currently, she is a visiting PhD student at Stanford University in the Dewar School of Sustainability, focusing on global water sustainability issues. We also have Ms. Serena Yoon, who is currently studying towards an LLB in laws at the London School of Economics and Political Science in the United Kingdom. Her academic focus centers on the role of environmental, social, and governance principles in shaping sustainable financing and compliance frameworks in the EU and the Asia-Pacific region. She is interested in providing a legal lens to the waste management strategies and technologies. Now, we will get started with the panel discussion session. The session will go for about 20 minutes. We also request our attendees to post their questions simultaneously freely to the chat box or raise their hands using the raise hand function on Zoom to ask a question to the panel or discuss something with them. Okay, Ms. Bentzin, over to you.
Okay. Oops.
Maybe
Okay.
I'll post the questions to the chat box.
Yes, I can pull them up again. I apologize. Okay, so I will, let's see. So one of the, I just put together a couple of questions for y'all to respond to, you know, and if I think to help facilitate this along, because I didn't practice this part. I've been on vacation managing my friend's wedding, so apologies. I'm going to pose a question, and if you could, you know, raise your thumbs up if you want to respond to it or provide an answer, and then we'll move to the next question. Is that a reasonable way to move forward? Okay. So here's one question I wanted to pose and have y'all respond to. You know, what is one lesson learned from your work integrating sustainability into your campus that might help or inform or inspire others on this call and the work that they're doing on their campuses? All right, Hanim, I'm sorry.
I just this is actually not my own work. It is actually practiced by my university. So what we do in order to integrate the sustainability into the student is like is by having them to do their research, their final year project that is related to sustainability. And then the project is actually within our campus. So they have to select certain area or certain topics and which has the element of sustainability into it. So every program, but this is actually compulsory, and then it is to every program. We need to have 10% out of our total students to do on sustainability for their final year project. That's one of the component that we do at my university for instill this sustainability into the students. And then another thing is that we have a subject, we call it like, it is under elective course. And then we have a sustainability subject where we have, introduce the component of sustainability to the students. So that is what we have right now at my university.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if someone else like to share.
Yeah.
Great. Oop, I saw a hand up there. Oop, I just lost my person. There we go. Rita.
Yes. Hi, my name is Rita. One lesson that I have learned. So I recently implemented a project, a sustainability education project in Ghana as part of the Waddell Fellowship program that I'm part of here at the University of Melbourne. And one very important lesson that I learned was about effective stakeholder engagement when it comes to integrating sustainability on campuses and getting people involved. Because sometimes it can be hard for, people are doing so many other things. Talking about the stakeholders, there's faculty, there's students, there's staff, and they are all already doing their own things, right? They are such busy with their lives and the jobs that they are doing. And so it takes a good deal of skill to be able to manage these stakeholders and bring them all together to be interested in also pushing this whole agenda forward. For example, so one example that I would mention was when I was implementing this project, because I was familiar with the university system back in Ghana, I went there and I knew who to go to first, who was interested, or who knew or had some interest about sustainability first. And then we tried to figure out how we could find a common grounds to get other people who are not so much into sustainability to be involved based on finding common place of interest, right? So that it's a win-win situation. And then when I did that, when we had to implement that event, I put up the link the night before, hoping that in 2 weeks we would have people register for it. And I woke up the next morning and there was 200 people on it. And I had to quickly take down the link because I didn't have capacity to, host that many people. So I really realized the important factor about effective stakeholder engagement when it comes to mobilizing for sustainability and even integrating it on campuses and everywhere else, including society.
Thank you. I've certainly found that even though I've learned this lesson over and over again, I often have to relearn it over and over again. Sometimes reminders come up. So it's a really great lesson you shared. Rico, want to share something about lesson?
In the case of the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, when we talk about sustainability, one lesson is really defining what it is. Sustainability is too broad that sometimes it gets confusing. But one way to crystallize its definition so that it becomes operational is to engage leadership. So what's good about UPLB, there's already now a clear direction, but towards firming such definition of sustainability. And then with this leadership definition of what is sustainability, we can then issue a number of memoranda, number of projects, a number of initiatives. So I think that pronouncement is one important lesson to really engage everybody and set the goal moving forward.
Thank you. I want to be able to jump to the next question. So Missouri, Serena, would you like to answer this question or share success as we move on to another question? Missouri, if you'd like to pick one of those two and share.
Good day, everyone. Okay, so unlike Prof. Manin, because I did recently join this, my institution, University of Malaya, which is actually already implemented the sustainability in the campus. So basically what I found out from if I could compare from the previous institution and now, what I can view is basically to succeed in to implement the sustainability, it requires various angles and effort from various levels. What I mean is that from the universities, from the faculties, and also from the students. So what I noticed, the main important criteria that to implement this is basically they set what we call as a policy. In our institution, we have the policy, sustainability policy, which actually to ensure that all the, sustainability practice being implemented by various parties. So basically, to succeed in this, to develop this kind of environmental eco-friendly behavior, there are many areas that I believe can sustain, can increase the level of sustainability. Number one would be in terms of environmental stewardship. As you also mentioned just now, the speaker mentions about the importance to have to integrate environmental like energy efficiency. I believe that I can see this, the installations of the solar panel on top of the bus stop roof. So this is one of the effort that have been done. And then in terms of the water management, I also have noticed that our institution also have done like install the rainwater harvesting system tank, which actually to collect all the water and then to use for the cleaning purpose and so on. So that would be in terms of environmental effort. And then in terms of the waste management, I also can view from the surroundings of the universities, where they also have some of the campaigns, zero waste campaigns have been done. And also there are some container which state the 3R, the use of reuse, recycle. So that is basically the environmental effort. In terms of the sustainability of operations, I believe to succeed, our institutions would also encourage the students to use the bus services instead of using cars. So that is one of the criteria to succeed, I think, to ensure that to reduce the numbers of the vehicles used in the campus. And then I also read previously related to minimize the use of electricity. So that is the announcements that have been made to all the staff, so that everyone take notes and aware. And besides of that, in terms of what we call to encourage the use of the single-use paper, encourage the use of plastic, one plastic for one universities, for instance. So that is also one of the information that I've received. And one more thing, I believe nowadays also most of the administration works mostly have encouraged all the staff and also students to use to encourage to use more like soft copy instead of hard copy, which means to reduce the use of the paper. So that would be the in terms of the operation. And last but not least, if we are talking about to succeed within universities which promote sustainability practice is as one mentions by one of the panelists, to collaborate with the community stakeholders or community involvement, which means we need to get a collaboration from the non-government organizations. Besides of that, in terms of students, as mentioned by Prof. Hanif just now, we also try to integrate students with any tasks, whether projects, for final year projects. So that would be my observations of how these institutions can sustain.
Thank you. Serena, would you like to share a success or lesson learned?
Yeah, thanks, Bonnie. I think I can cover both at the same time. I just kind of wanted to build on something you mentioned. You talked about how culture and an organization structure can have an impact on, the success of a sustainability program. And looking at UK and European universities, I think our geographical model of being located in very urban centers, having a lot of commercial buildings around us, and sharing the utilities with the local environment has a big impact on how students really feel the extent of the sustainability measures. For instance, our university, LSE, our students recently successfully campaigned to divest funds away from fossil fuel and high carbon emitting enterprises. And if we look around on the motivations behind such campaigns, students kind of talk about how being able to live in London and these very urban centers, they can feel the impact of, if their universities are truly making an impact. And I think that is something to note of, the catalyst that can really drive success in sustainability programs.
Okay, thank you. Yora.
Yeah, actually, I would like to make a question after my opinion. I'm doing a research on evaluation of the sustainability of businesses, like industries, not like campus you did, but I think those performances or like those activities would be more or less the same in terms of conserving nature and reuse the water resources things. But I feel there is a challenge in explaining why they are doing for those industries or companies. So there are global standards to disclose the water uses, and they have good initiatives help to make water more sustainably used. But still, the companies are focusing on managing those monitoring values and reports, and I don't feel they are really understanding how those values or those performances act for the sustainability itself. So for that, it's quite challenging to quantify or like solidify the level of sustainability with their histories, like with their performances have been done. So I just wonder, how could you track those outcomes through the plans you have made in campus, and how could you see how much we are close to the sustainability and how far we were before? Like that would be the most challengeable part, I guess. So yeah, that is one of my questions.
Rita, do you want to take a stab for responding first, and then I can tag in?
Sorry?
Yeah, I think at the University of Melbourne, for the faculty, I'm speaking this with regards to the Faculty of Education and what has been done in that faculty. The first thing was to first do like a sustainability scan, where we first try to establish the base of what was happening already, because sometimes you are doing things about sustainability and may not really know that that's a sustainability thing that you're doing. So we first conducted a scan to see what things are happening or what things are being implemented, made a pile of all of that, so we have a database, and then we see how we could improve on that and what other things we could bring on to be able to scale it up. And one way to also measure that is you can see what was happening before and what's happening now, but also the monitoring and evaluation processes are also really important for you to see how much progress you have made, whether there's need for a review or not, and how to restructure or realign things to be able to push this forward. I hope that answers your question. And I also wanted to add something about contextual considerations. So one of the main reasons that actually pushed my interest in looking into higher education and sustainability was because I was working in one of Ghana's universities, and in the role of a quality assurance and academic planning officer. And then also that was at that time I was doing my master's in environmental planning, and so was trying to find a topic that blended these two fields together. And I was like, wait, maybe I can try to see how sustainability education, well, I understand there's a lot of sustainability content in our curriculum for the students, so let me see how it is really translating into forming the characters and behaviors of students. And apparently there was not much transformation, right? And then we realized that most of the curriculum content that was there was not context-based. They had not been fine-tuned to the context that students could really take action. So it was more about education of sustainability and not for sustainability, because it wasn't leading to any transformation. So which is why I also went to implement that water fellowship project that I talked about. So context is really important for driving transformations. If we really want to see results and not just meeting standards, but really want to progress sustainability, then these are really important things to look at.
And I'll kind of tag on to that and answer the question that's in the Q&A. This is a challenge. First of all, traditional reporting can be sort of one-dimensional and doesn't really doesn't tell the whole story. So first of all, one of the things I would say is align your metrics and align methodologies with other similar organizations or systems or whatever, however your organizations work, peer institutions. This is hard. We struggle even just our UC system aligning methodologies. I report from my residence halls, but Irvine doesn't, for example, and I'm being compared to them, right? So they're two very different things. If I could eliminate my residence halls from my waste numbers, I'd have much better numbers, right? So aligning methodologies with some peers or something, a consistent structure like ASHE, the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, has sort of a STARS mechanism that they've been, they're on their fourth iteration of it now, and it's a common metric. But again, that you've got to catch the stories as well, because just the data is not enough. The stories are what not only sort of talk about the impacts and really drive home the value, and is also which captures the imagination and the emotion of all of your stakeholders and get them activated. And then, the next thing I'd say is that, transitioning to align with UN Sustainable Development Goals as well, that I think are much more multidimensional, not just sort of a one-dimensional, data metrics help with that as well. Anyone else want to, the panels panelists would like to add to any context to the answer to this question? Again, the question was insights on how higher education institutions measure and report their sustainability progress effectively.
Very important actually for higher education institutions to do the alignment of what we do per our mandate. And I know it is expected of us to do more, like we need to walk the talk, but I know it has to be data-driven. A clear methodological framework must be set. Data is important in there, but I agree with you, Bonnie, that there has to be a story in there. But that story has to be driven also by the culture, by the values. So much work on really increasing the awareness is important. Students are, of course, very much aware. The integration of sustainability concepts in other members or other stakeholders of the university would be important. Alignment across these stakeholders would be crucial, so that when we measure sustainability, it is not something that is an added on what we actually do, but it should be the work that we do. We don't want everybody to think that when we talk about sustainability, it is on top of what we are doing, because that's going to be repulsive. That's not going to win everybody. We just really have to make sure that the measurement is exactly at the core of how we operate as a university and what we do as member of the university. Back to you.
Thank you. I just want to do a time check. So we are past the 1 hour mark. Should we continue, or do we want to wrap up?
Yeah, I think we can wrap up now, because we have addressed the questions as well as the panel discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just share my contact information up here, and thank y'all for listening to some of the stories I had to tell, and thank you to the panelists to sharing some of your stories and some of your experience. It's, like I said, very important. you know, we can always learn something from each other. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bonny, and our panelists for an engaging discussion and answering the questions. Now we request your understanding for capturing a group photo. Our team will assist you in promoting as panelists. Please bear with us for a minute. We are almost set and have promoted everybody as a panelist, almost everybody. Okay, let's take a picture then. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, once more. Smile. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everyone. We have now reached the end of the session, and before concluding the webinar, I thank Ms. Bentzin, our speaker for today's session, and our panelists for their valuable insights and for engaging the audience to an enlightening discussion. I thank all our attendees for their participation. We extend our special thanks to the APRU and the APRU SWM program led by Professor Yongshi Kok of Korea University for organizing these events and creating a learning and networking platform for students, researchers, and everybody. We request you to look forward to our upcoming sessions as well. The next session is on August 20th on Corporate Sustainability and ESG Management by Professor E.J. Hyok of Korea University. Thank you once again, everyone. We hope you all have a great day and great evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you again. Bye.
Bye-bye.